This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi.
That it is, and we are taking your phone calls if you want to express yourself in any way, shape, or form about the stories that we're covering for you. Just give us a call. 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537, 24/7. Leave your thoughts, opinions on those cases right there. We may use you on a future episode of the program. It's Tony and Carol Hughes with you today. We got a call here about one of the calls that we had a couple weeks ago regarding, I believe, Gabby Petito and some of the safeguarding stuff that we were discussing in terms of keeping our young people safe, specifically younger women. Let's take a listen.
Hey, Tony, this is Christy from Los Angeles. I just listened to the Safeguarding Our Daughters episode with you and Stacy after the call I left around Gabby Petito. So thank you so much for starting this conversation. I think it's, part of how we get to the self-education that you're talking about is by talking about it on podcasts and things like that, like having it in an area where people are listening. I just wanted to share one additional thought there is, yes, this should, like Stacey mentioned, this should be taught in junior high, and abso-fucking-lutely it should. Because to your point, not everyone has a parent or a guardian or a role model that is able to model a healthy relationship. And the types of things that are not taught, I mean, yes, nowadays, not when, we were young maybe, but nowadays they're talking a lot about consent in terms of just like sexual consent, which is wonderful. But consent is not always so black and white, and it's different when someone has been just really mentally groomed and beaten down to the point where it's really challenging for them, like, just like if you look at the police video with Gabby Petito, like, she's not saying, yes, I want you to arrest him and blah, 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 because it's like she's been just completely under his manipulation for so long. And I just wanted to share that I speak on this issue, on teen dating violence. And as a survivor and as an author, I will go to schools and speak. And I have not had a single experience where the school has not fought back on it. Like one time in Michigan, I was going to a school and I was it was going to be a large presentation and everything. And the day that I arrived, they said, we thought about it more, and we just think that that this topic is a little too adult for the students. So instead, we're going to have you just speak to small groups of students that want to opt into hearing about this. And I'm like, but those are not the kids that need to hear this. If they are opting in to hear about this kind of thing as an extracurricular, then they likely know. I mean, it's great they want to educate themselves, but it's not the people that really need to hear this message as much as it is the people that don't even know they need to hear this message. Because if, to Stacey's point, if you're not going to get to a place where you have, you're not going to notice these red flags, and then you find yourself in a situation where it starts to escalate and eventually becomes violent. And by the time it becomes violent, these kids they have been trained to accept that over a long period of time. It's not like the first date, you get slapped. It's like no one would put up with that, but it's a process, and this needs to be taught. We all need to do better at this from a education standpoint. Parents should just be able to do this, but, we can't just assume every parent's going to get this right. Like, the schools need to have something. They talk about STDs, they talk about safe sex, they talk about consent. Like, why are we not talking about dating violence? The prevalence in modern youth is unreal. So I just wanted to point out my own personal thing is like, there have been times where I've been booked at like teen groups. And then as it gets closer, you know, a parent complains. I even one time had a parent say, "You're not going to talk about anything real like rape, are you?" And I was floored. I was like, okay, like this does not make sense. Like you are literally making the case here. Like you're the one saying, admitting in your rude, you know, remark that it's a real thing. So why wouldn't that be part of the conversation? But no, of course I'm not going to sit and talk gratuitously about sexual violence. But, you know, the point is nothing that I'm saying in these talks is controversial, but people are not comfortable admitting that teens are going through this, and it's just something that our society has not yet accepted that is a problem. And I think that Gabby Petito's situation has shined, hopefully, a light into some of this darkness. And I hope that it will help people become a little bit more open to hearing about it when they see these types of consequences. Anyway, sorry this is so long. It's just a topic I get hot about. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you again, Tony. Bye.
I totally hear where she's coming from. And we're in a place where teachers already have their hands tied just trying to teach the normal material that's supposed to be going out there without the parents complaining and trying to helicopter that. Right. And then when you try to get into actual meaningful material like life shit that talks about abusive relationships or anything that may or may not make the child uncomfortable, which I think is one thing. Too many parents are so afraid of making their children uncomfortable that they just shield them from everything and that they can't handle anything. And then you also have the thing where maybe if you educate your kids too much on what some of these things are, they may wise up a little bit and go and say, some of these people in my life seem to be acting these ways.
Exactly.
Maybe, but if mom and dad are trying to bury their head in the sand and pretend that one of them isn't one of these characters, or maybe grandpa or an uncle or whoever isn't one of these characters, but if we never teach the kids about this, then they'll be none the wiser. But in reality, they'll grow up, but they're going to end up finding it out by trial and error, by falling into a relationship with one of these horrible human beings, and then suffer the consequences of it. Maybe they'll walk away from it going, I never want to be with that type of person again. Or maybe they'll become codependent and live a horrible life because they don't know how to get out of it. So yes, these things should certainly be taught in school. We teach so much bullshit that is not applicable to life. I can't imagine almost anything more important than teaching some of these life skills about relationships, about abuse, about what that actually means and what it is, how to identify it, and how to get the hell out of it, and also what is not abuse as well. Because I think it swings the other way sometimes too, where people will make claims of this is abuse, and it's like, no, it's not. You just because you're uncomfortable, you don't like something, doesn't mean it's necessarily abuse. It may be a difference of opinion or something, but define what the fuck that actually is so these kids understand it. Okay, off my soapbox, your turn.
Well, I would also like to see her not only talk to kids, but I think going to police departments and having that same conversation with people, because the police in that case should have seen the signs. The signs were there. The signs were there. 100%. You and I watching that video, that was heartbreaking to me. She's not going to speak up. He's right over there.
Of course she's not. No, she's codependent.
Say anything.
No, she's codependent. She's young. And I'm not meaning this in a negative way. She's dumb. Everybody at that age is dumb, I'm saying it. So it's not just her. Young and dumb is synonymous with early 20-somethings. We all were at one time. So you're going to not make good decisions for yourself.
But at the same time, she could have been 40 years old and that exact same scenario can play out.
It could. Yeah, you're right. I think hopefully there's a little more.
And I'm not going to say just women because it can go both ways. But you're slowly groomed. Yep. You're slowly manipulated.
Exactly.
It takes time. And it breaks my heart that this is happening more and more to young women, teenage women, high school age women, girls in college. And they get in these abusive relationships. They've never had a real conversation with it, but he loves me. You know, you guys don't know this side of him that I know. I've been in that relationship. where I remember my family members having a conversation with me. And I'm like, but you don't know him the way I know him.
Oh, yeah. Well, then at the same point,
They
too.
were right. I was wrong. He was very abusive.
Well, at the same point, too, even if you do recognize it was something with your child, there's only so many things you can do, especially if they're over the age of 18.
Agreed. And in this case, it would have been harder for the parents to get involved.
Yeah.
And I think, too, you can have that conversation with someone, but they're going to, no, you don't know him. I know him. He's not like that.
That's
And he is
yeah.
like that.
And unfortunately, that just kind of comes along with, like I said, being young and dumb. I've been there.
Yeah.
You've been there. Basically, everyone alive has been young and dumb at one point in time. But when you're young and dumb, sometimes you think you are the smartest and the most insightful, and you know what's going on. It's a new stage in life. It's kind of exciting. There is a new amount of knowledge that has come to you, but it is not the knowledge that you're going to have 20, 30 years down the line. You're just not there yet, making you much more susceptible to people like this.
And I agree with that woman, and I applaud her for what she's doing, because
I agree.
that's a hard conversation to have with people, and say she's speaking to 100 kids. If she got through to 5 of them,
Yeah.
you can't. Oh, it doesn't matter what the topic is. You're not going to get through to everyone all the time. But just having that conversation with your own children, signs they need to watch out for. But I just know once you get into the relationship, and I'm using air quotes, you love him so much that you're going to make all these excuses for him, because I've been there. And then it takes time to see it for what it is. And I think had police that day intervened and separated them and not kind of rolled their eyes at her like, oh, she's a hormonal crazy woman, I think this could have been much different.
Well, and there's physical abuse, there's mental abuse, and sometimes it just gets looked at. We only we tend to recognize or register only the physical, whereas the mental can be far worse, and have far more damaging effects than the physical. Obviously, both are horrible, but it seems the only ones that we seem to take seriously in this country, as with most of our medical profession in our country, we operate on physical. We don't operate on mental so much. Mental's always kind of on the back burner. It's like, well, yeah, you have a little bit of coverage here if you want to exercise your mental health. You can see a therapist 3 times in a year, and we'll cover that. Everything else out of pocket, and it's going to be $500 a pop. Yes. I mean, so we don't put the weight on it that it should be, which it should be the opposite way around, because mental health affects physical health in so many ways, shapes, and forms. If we had a better mental health system, we wouldn't have a majority of the problems that we do physically. If people are healthy mentally, they're going to be healthier physically as well. The two work
I couldn't agree with you more on that.
So anyway, thank you for that insight. Do appreciate it, and appreciate your comments.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
Want to weigh in? You can do so. The phone number, 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you're downloading podcasts. You don't miss any of the conversations, breaking updates, and interviews on the stories we're following for you right here. My name's Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.